Bonjour, mon ami. I am coming to you today for week 11 from Montreal, and thus the French. And I'm filming this on Wednesday evening, and my husband and I just got home from seeing the Basilica, the Notre Dame Basilica here in Montreal. And we saw it at night, and they put on this incredible show, which sounds weird for a basilica. But basically, it's a sound, light, video projection show, and it's all done using the ceiling and the walls of a basilica. And a basilica, it's enormous, like the grand churches of Europe. And it was just beautiful. So anyway, got to see that while I'm in Montreal. Okay, so we are at week 11. Pursue continuous quality improvement in the nurse educator role. I feel that we've talked quite a bit about quality improvement throughout this course, particularly the first kind of task, which is pursue lifelong learning. We've definitely talked about that a lot, and I would hope that as you have students and future nurses, that you are encouraging them to also engage in lifelong learning. But let's look down at a few of the other tasks that I want to talk about that maybe they'll have a little bit more content to them than that lifelong learning one. So one of them that I want to talk about is balances teaching, scholarship, and service demands. This applies a little bit more to academia, but also somewhat to the clinical setting. So in academia, you're hired to teach, right? But then you also have the service and scholarship component. On the service side, it could be service within the College of Nursing. It could be service within the community. When I taught at a community college, I actually chaired the college-wide curriculum committee, and that was quite a task, but it was really enjoyable. And there's a lot of different ways that you can serve within the college or university setting. And then the service piece could also be outside. For instance, you might consult with a clinical setting, maybe on a research project they're doing or implementing EPP, something on that line. So that's a piece of it too. It could be implementing a service learning component to a course that you're teaching. So there's a couple different ways that can be interpreted. And then scholarship, depending on your organization. If you're at a university and you're teaching in a higher level degree program, you might be expected to have a line of research. You might be expected to have funding for research, to publish a certain amount, kind of depending. Even at the community college level, while there's not an emphasis on formal research and publishing, there is an emphasis on action research in many community colleges. So doing research as you develop your courses, as you make changes in your courses, really keeping data to see what works. I was the dean of one program, and I was looking at factors for our program that help determine student success. In that particular setting, we found that grades in the science courses that were prerequisites were a pretty good determinant of how successful a student was going to be in the nursing program. So there's a lot of different things that you can look at as far as action research. Now in the clinical setting, yes, you're hired to be an educator, but education is so embedded in everything: strategic planning, accreditation, bringing on a new service line. There's so many things that education can be involved with. You do have to kind of protect yourself a little bit in terms of having enough time to do the education piece besides attending a bunch of meetings. And then on the service side, depending on your role, you might be asked to do more unit-based education if you're a hospital-based educator. And you kind of have to see how much of that you can balance with your primary role. There might be also things on the service side that you're involved in. Some educators get very involved when student nurses are coming into the facility and get involved in planning their experiences or providing an orientation, or even the scheduling of students within the facility. So there could be a couple ways that these are applied. So Basically, you just don't want to overextend yourself. You have to create a balance between those competing demands on your time. Another one is using feedback. And educators, we try to get feedback because we're always in this continuous quality improvement loop, right? And if you're in academia, you tend to get feedback at the end of a course, like end of course surveys and that sort of thing. But I would also encourage those of you in the clinical side to really do evaluation pieces of your teaching on the clinical side. So again, continuous quality improvement, did it really hit the mark? Were the objectives able to be completed, etc.? Sometimes on the clinical side, some clinical educators will provide a lot of offerings, but will miss that kind of crucial feedback piece. And that's unfortunate. And I think evaluation tools have to be kind of crafted for what you really want to get at. I've seen some evaluation tools. Were the objectives met? Was the room an appropriate temperature? Did all the AV materials work? That's not a great evaluation tool. You really want to try to do something, and it doesn't have to be a written tool. It can be a case study at the end or something like that. There's all those evaluation tools that we've talked about before, but you want to make sure that you do have some sort of evaluation at the end. Otherwise, we keep doing the same old things that we've always done and we don't grow. And one that's kind of interesting, engages in activities that promotes one's socialization to the role. This gets into culture and norms and the things we were talking about last week. How do you socialize to the role? Teaching can actually be quite isolating. Often you're alone in the classroom, you're alone creating what you're going to teach, and there's not a lot of interaction maybe with other educators except during meetings, and that's not a really good idea to just have it be that. So there's a lot of ways that I've seen this overcome. One thing that I really like is a concept called teaching circles, where a group of faculty or educators will get together to discuss maybe a book, and they'll maybe do a chapter a month. They'll read the book, they'll read the book, focusing on a chapter a month. They'll come to the meeting to discuss that chapter and how it relates to teaching, and it's usually a book about education. So that's kind of cool. And so you need to kind of think about how are you going to partner with other educators to really grow in your role. And let's say that maybe you are a sole educator at a clinical facility. Then how are you going to reach out? How are you going to reach other educators maybe within your organization, maybe within your field? So you can bounce ideas off each other. Sometimes you just need to vent to somebody who understands what you're going through. So don't minimize that socialization of the role. It actually can be quite important. All right. I think I'm probably going to stop there. I could talk a whole bunch about legal and ethical issues. Maybe we'll get into that this week. But I wanted to tell you that I am also going to attach an article teaching students continuous quality improvement. We do it, we want our students to do it, and it actually it's not a long article, but it's an interesting approach to how educators decided to bring to life CQI for these students. So I'd like you to take a look at it and then give me your thoughts and see what you think. And does this sound like a realistic thing? It's done with nursing students, but I actually think it could be done with new grad or new nurses to a facility too. So, all right. I will be looking over your NEPD forms probably this weekend and giving you that feedback. And otherwise, we're moving forward. Just going to throw out a heads up again out there. The portfolio is eventually coming up, and you will need 2 letters of reference. So just going to put those reminders out there again that you need to be working on those. And we'll be talking about that more probably next week and the week after. All right, guys. See you in the main forum.